Hello, friends, and welcome to Born to Be All of Me, the podcast. I am your host, Amber Sousa, and today I am really excited to be here with my friend, Dr. Carrie Mackensen. Hi, Carrie.
Hi, Amber. I'm
Oh
happy to
my
be
gosh.
here with you.
Thank you. Thank you. I was saying to Carrie before we hit record, we've had to reschedule this several times for, whatever reasons. And today my daughter's home sick and I was like, I will not reschedule. So we are going with it. Um, I want to read your bio and then I
Okay.
want to let our listeners know what we're going to be talking about. And then I also just want to say that, when we very first met, we really connected deeply on being fierce mama bears and advocates and protectors of our children. And so it does not surprise me that your focus today is really all about how we can help our children be all of who they were born to be. So I'm going to go ahead and read your bio. Dr. Carrie Mackensen, affectionately called Dr. Carrie by her clients, holds a PhD in individual, family, and child psychology. She has been working in the field of psychology for over 25 years in various settings from K through 12 schools, as an attending psychologist at Cedars Sinai Hospital, as the clinical director of two high-end residential treatment programs, one for addiction and another for eating disorders. And she ran a private practice in Beverly Hills and Manhattan Beach, California. She is a licensed clinical psychologist turned parent coach because, as she explains, kids don't come with operating manuals. Amen. Oh, Dr. Carey believes parents are the most influential people in a child's life. And as such, parents need support and guidance to parent optimally. She started Successful Parent to coach parents with science-based strategies to overcome challenges so kids and families can thrive. Today, so you have a wealth of knowledge clearly and can support families and children in so many areas. Today, I know we wanted to kind of hone in on and focus on, at least to start, and then we'll see where we go. You've been talking a lot and sharing a lot about how the impact screens and social media are having on our kids' developing brains. So I told you I listened to you were on our mutual friend Nicole Shaka's podcast recently,
Mhm.
and I listened to the podcast episode, and I have to say, for those people that are listening who are feeling anxious about what they're going to learn, I feel you. You're not alone. It's almost like I was likening it to, when you start to learn how like so many things cause cancer, you're like, oh my God, like
Yeah,
I can't eat this and I can't eat this and I can't have dryer
right.
sheets and I can't. And you just feel so overwhelmed. Like I
Yeah.
can't, it's kind of like that. Like I felt anxious knowing that I was going to have this conversation with you because I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have to like stop
Mhm.
everything I'm doing. And so for anybody listening, I just want you to know that Dr. Carey is one of the most compassionate, loving, supportive. It's about progress, not perfection. There's no
That's right.
judgment, right? Like I hear you say that all the time. This is a safe, judgment-free zone. We are not here
Right.
to, you know, feel bad about ourselves. We're here to learn,
That's right.
right? And when we know
Yeah,
better, we do better, like
exactly.
Dr. Maya Angelou has said. And so that's
Yeah,
what we're here, right? We're here
right.
to get information so that we can make informed choices and do better because we know better, right?
That's right. Yeah, well stated. I think it's really important to just deflate the parent guilt and shame out of the conversation because I truly believe that parents do the best they can with the information and the ability they have at the time. And by the way, my best on one day is different and distinct from my best on another day. And so we have to give ourselves a little grace. I have so much compassion for parents. One, because I am one.
Mm.
And I have done extensive training. I got a PhD in this subject, and yet I make mistakes as a parent. And so it's like, wow, if I spent all this time on education and clinical training and experience, and I still have these moments where I'm like, oh, how do we expect someone who went to school to become an orthodontist or a musician or fill in the blank to know what to do in these high emotional moments with their kids? Now, there's so much more to parenting than screens. One of the reasons I'm focusing on it is because it really is a low-hanging fruit,
Mm.
right? So if we can address this, a lot of other things improve with our children, in our family system, and in our household. And I liken it to this. When I was running the treatment program for substance and drug abuse, and when I was working with eating disorder patients, if somebody was actively using, or if an anorexic was severely underweight and brain starved, it didn't matter how brilliant the interpretation or intervention of the treatment team was. If they were using or brain starved, it was going to fall flat. And what a lot of parents don't recognize is they're trying to implement parenting strategies that they're learning from this parent coach or Dr. Becky or whoever it may be. And it's falling flat because their kids' brains have been hijacked by this high dopamine trigger
Mm.
of interactive screens. And so we really want to address that so that we have a level playing field to start doing the things that really help shape who our kids grow up to be.
Yes, I mean, it's so beautiful. And I I want to jump right into this because this is where I really it really hit me. So I actually, speaking of drug treatment, and I actually went through rehab when I was 19 years old. Um, I have chosen to let go of alcohol in my normal daily life. There is definitely addiction in my, family history, in, my children's dad's family history. I heard you say on Nicole's podcast that the center of the brain that gets groomed for addiction, or that, right,
Yeah, the
that
addiction pathway, that's part
that
of the
yes,
reward center in the limbic system of the brain.
yes, that screen time, and particularly like the interactive screen and the YouTube
Hmm.
shorts, that that it's like grooming that part of the brain, getting it ready. And so if you happen to have addiction in your family, you want to pay particular attention to that with your kids. And I got to tell you, last week, Carrie, um, I I had a conversation with my kids. My kids are 10 and 12. I have a 10-year-old son and a 12-year-old daughter, and I've been very open with them about addiction in our family. And,
That's great.
I mean, they're very aware of it. And
Important.
I mentioned it to my son that I wanted to eliminate YouTube shorts. Now,
Hmm.
I'm not going from 0 to 100. I'm not saying to them, we're getting rid of everything, right?
Right.
So I said, we're going to eliminate the YouTube shorts and just see how we feel. And then I explained to them that that, triggers, or, gets that part of their brain that is the pathway to addiction. Um,
Hmm.
and so we just want to be mindful of that.
Right.
And my son in the very beginning handled it really well. Okay, mom, I gotcha. He was on board. Well, by the next morning, I had to deal with, and this is a typically very compliant, sweet, loving boy. But I had to deal with the silent treatment and anger, and
Hmm.
you don't get it. This is something that makes me happy, and it's not a big
Yeah.
deal. And you're just listening to all these other moms, and they're just
Yeah.
right. And so it was painful to me.
Oh,
It was painful to me. And I said to him, you know what, buddy? There is a part of me that wants to say, forget it, just watch it. Because
yeah.
it's so hard as a mom to have your children be angry with you and be upset with
right?
you and blame you for their unhappiness. But I said, but I love you so much
Yeah,
that I'm willing, because I know that this choice is coming from a place of love and wanting the best for you, I'm willing for you to be upset with me temporarily. So I
yeah.
get it. If you're going to be upset, like, it makes me sad, it's hard, and it's okay.
Hey, bravo to you. It is not easy holding the boundaries when you know that's what's in your best interest. We parents have to be willing to take the hit, and it's easier said than done. And I too have experienced those moments where I'm like, maybe I should just let them do that, whatever it is they're asking for. And then I fall back on, but I'm the adult thinking mind here, and I know what's in their best interest. And if they were asking me, to drink a beer or to try drugs, I would have no problem saying, yeah, no, I'm sorry.
Right.
And yet, one of the reasons I'm so passionate about this topic is that the vast majority of parents have no idea that these interactive screens, and I'm not talking about passive screen watching, like the television set on your wall or on furniture at home.
Okay.
Let's be distinct and clear about that. We're really talking about interactive screens. So a smartphone, a tablet like an iPad, and video games. Those interactive devices are what is lighting up the middle part of the brain. That's what's flooding your kids with dopamine, right? And that's what's getting them hooked. And the tech companies know this, and they're doing it on purpose because that's how they earn money. Your kid or us, we are not their customer, we're their product. And our attention is for sale to the highest bidder. And so they want our eyeballs on it for as long as possible. Our kids, with their brains not yet fully developed, we cannot expect them to be able to say, yep, that's enough time for me. I'm going to put it away now.
Right.
No, it's hard enough for us adults. I mean, adults, moms I talk to, and myself, you get on Instagram and the next thing you know, 20 minutes has gone by. But
Right.
we expect our children to be able to self-monitor. Their brains aren't even fully connected yet. So that's where we parents have to come in and set the boundaries. And I think you did a great job, not only connecting it to your family history, but also explaining it. Because when we can explain the reason behind our no, that gives context for kids. We're not just saying no because I told you so and,
Mhm.
saying I'm a mean mom, but there's a reason I'm doing this. I've learned how these interactive devices are impacting your brain. And I will gladly share with you after this podcast. I gave a presentation to fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth graders on this very topic.
Okay.
And I got such positive feedback from
Oh,
parents
great.
because here's what all of us parents know, myself included. I can say something to my kids 157 times in one ear, out the other. You could come in and say the same thing to my kids, and they would come to me and say, Mom, did you know that Miss Sousa told me ba 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 ba? And right, they take it in. And so
Right.
maybe have your kids watch this presentation because it puts it into context and it shows these MRI brain scans. And
Mm.
it's fascinating to see. So you can take a child who is spending too much time on interactive devices, whether smartphone or video game, and put them in a functional MRI. And their brain is not only understimulated, but visibly underdeveloped. And your kids will see that as clear as daylight. Then they remove the screens, they put them through a detox and a treatment program, and then they give the kids an MRI brain scan, and their brain is it's firing again. This is not a message of doom and gloom. This is a message of hope. So it
Right.
doesn't matter what parents have done with screens in their home up to
Right.
this point, we can make changes because the brain has something called neuroplasticity.
Mhm.
And that means it's moldable, it's changeable. Here's the key though. Our brains, our adult brains, the older we get, not as changeable as our children's brains, who are
Right.
in the most pivotal period of brain development. So, what they do now literally shapes their brain, how they manage their emotions, how they cope with stress, how they interact in relationships, how they feel about themselves, how they show up in the world. It's really important that we put guardrails around the activities they do because there are some activities that support healthy brain development and allow them to be their full self so they can be free to be all of them and reach their full potential. And then there are activities that are limiting them. And most parents aren't aware of that correlation. And that's why it's important to have these conversations.
So let me repeat back to you in the way that I understand it when you're talking about like the parts of the brain that are lighting up. So is this accurate? As humans, we all have natural dopamine that releases from natural occurring activities, right? Like
Yeah,
dancing
healthy
and
activities.
singing and interacting
Dancing
with
is
each
very
other.
healthy.
It's one of my most
Yeah,
favorite. And so if so that's great. And as humans, we really are all wanting to experience that pleasure that
of
comes
course.
through the natural release of dopamine. So what you're saying is in these young developing brains, if they're bombarding themselves with dopamine, like forced dopamine through interactive screens, it's not giving the natural release of dopamine through healthy activities um, to come to be coming through as much. And so it's harder for the natural occurring dopamine to give the experience of pleasure once you've become addicted to needing this device. Is it
Yes.
like that?
So here's what happens with these interactive devices. So
Okay.
you were spot on.
Okay.
Dopamine is not bad.
Yes.
Dopamine is essential. We human beings need dopamine to motivate us to
Right.
do things that are good for us. That's why it's there. So dancing, right? You get a hit of dopamine. Or if your kids do Legos, they get a shot of dopamine. Or if we go outside and ride our bikes, we get, again, a dose of dopamine. That motivates us to do more of those activities. The issue with interactive screens is they flood their brain with an inordinate and unnatural amount of dopamine.
I see.
So if you hang out with your kids and you guys are laughing and playing a board game and having a great time together, they're getting dopamine. But here's what happens with repeated screen use. Because it raises the dopamine baseline, meaning the interactive screens flood their brain with so much dopamine that now everyday activities no longer make them feel good.
Yeah.
So, and in fact, they're boring, which is why they keep going back to the screen. They need that dopamine, that huge fix in order
Mm-hmm.
to feel not only happy, but oftentimes even normal.
Ooh. So I listened to the statistics and it's painful, but that makes me think about like the increase in depression, right? Because if it's harder for kids to experience pleasure and joy in daily activities, um, unless they're getting that hit, that fix through the interactive screen time, then they're more likely to experience depression, anxiety, lows. Is that a correlation that would be accurate?
That's a really interesting point you brought up. There's a lot of different factors, right, that play into the increase in depression, but it is staggering. So, since about 2012, the rate of diagnosable clinical depression in our girls aged 12 to 17 has increased 134%,
Mm,
and in boys, 161%. So, what's important to understand, and I could go on with anxiety, it's up 161%. Self-harm in boys is up 171% and 311% in our girls.
wow.
And suicide in children aged 10 to 14 is up 67% in our boys and 117% in our girls. All of this is shocking and concerning, and it sets off the alarm bells in parents. But what's really important to point out is these increases are just in the last 12 to 14 years.
Right.
So what happened 12 or 14 years ago? Because we have never seen in recorded history increases in the prevalence of mental health disorders in our youth this drastic and this fast, ever in recorded
Wow.
history.
Really?
Well, here's what happened. In 2007, the iPhone came out. In 2010, and this was a big one, the front-facing camera and
Mm.
Instagram and the iPad, which I know has become ubiquitous with parenting. Like a lot of parents think, well, the iPad just came out in 2010. It feels like it's been around for forever.
Yeah.
But the iPad came out. And that's when I started seeing a lot of big emotional outbursts with toddlers in my private practice around 2013 and 14 that didn't match what I had been seeing for, more than a decade before. So when these things came out, that's when the mental health crisis started in our youth.
Wow.
This is not just a happenstance correlation. This is a direct result. So when you talk about depression, could some of it be part of that dopamine? Yes, but there are a lot of other things that are going on with it. So when kids are spending more time on interactive screens, they're also spending less time face to face, right?
Hmm.
Having conversations. Here's the thing with these screens, whether it's a video game, an iPad, or social media, it doesn't fill your bucket.
Hmm.
Like you're going to keep chasing it, but it never really lands because that's not what we humans need. We need each other. We
Hmm.
need the oxytocin and the dopamine that comes from eye contact and touch and close connection.
Mm.
And kids are also isolating. So the amount of time kids are spending, which for the average 8 to 12-year-old is 4 to 6 hours a day on interactive devices. That's not including the amount of
Wow.
time they spend on devices at school or for homework. And the average teenager, 9 hours a day,
Wow.
7 hours alone on their smartphone. And that's not even including the time they spend on a device at school and doing their homework. So they're spending so much time on these devices. They're isolating. They're not outside moving their bodies. They're not doing the things that promote mental health, physical health, and well being. And that's why we parents have to step in, educate ourselves, and learn so that we can protect our kids because it's really not fair to them and it's not fair to us parents. I can
Right.
tell you from the treatment programs I ran and from my private practice, when a parent's child is struggling, there's almost nothing as painful,
Oh, I know.
right? I mean, it is the worst.
Mm.
When our kids hurt, we hurt.
Yes.
And so it's not just, oh, they're just playing a video game. Yes, it's a video game, but let's understand the impact it's having on their developing brain and their mental health. I am not an all or nothing person. I don't I don't subscribe to families need to be completely screen free. That's not the world we live in. I mean,
Right.
it just isn't. So it really is more about let's pick and choose and let's find balance.
Hmm.
And I think that's the key to success.
So let me ask you, yes. I mean, because automatically, like, I'm like, okay, let's just all move away and live off, like, get rid of it totally and just go back to how it used to be and play outside, but it's like, okay, well, that's
Yeah,
not the world that we live in. So if we're not going to completely eliminate everything, what would you say is a healthy, so you said um, 4 to 6 hours of screen time a day is an
is
average.
average
So
here in the United States.
what would you say would be, if you're not going to eliminate completely, would be a
Yeah.
goal that we're shooting for?
Yes. And if anyone listening wants to go to my website, I have a
Yes.
free download for families.
Okay.
It's a 4-page document that is really simple and it gives bulletproof, maybe bullet points that kind of walk you through it. But here's some of the things that I mentioned.
Okay.
Ideally, and I know this doesn't work in all families, again, I like to say, here's what's ideal, and then you do what you're able to do,
Right.
right? Shoot for the stars, maybe you'll hit the moon. That's still great, right? We want to go for incremental positive change because that helps wire their brains for the better. So if you're able to go screen free Monday through Thursday,
Okay.
meaning no video games Monday through Thursday, we're not scrolling YouTube on our iPad Monday through Thursday. That's so beneficial. That gives their
Television
brain a
shows,
break.
okay.
If you want to watch a television show as a family, put a limit on it.
Okay.
So in our house, we're we don't watch television shows as a general rule, but
Okay.
we always make room for exceptions. We love Monday Night Football,
Right.
or if there's an awards show on or some music, something that's really fun to watch, then we'll sit down as a family and watch it. So again, watching TV does not have the same impact that these interactive screens do.
Okay.
With an important note of we also need to discuss content. Maybe we'll come back to that.
Okay.
Um, so Monday through Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, let's give our kids time to play video games if
Okay.
that's allowed in your house. Let's do family movie night. Let's let your kid watch a show. These are not bad things. What we want to do is talk about the amount of time that we allow them to do it.
Okay.
So the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends 2 hours a day or less. I personally think that's a little unrealistic because a movie alone is 2 hours, right?
Right.
So this is what I think, not what the American Academy of Pediatrics. I say general good framework is on the weekends, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, keep it to 3 hours or less.
Okay.
Now, of course, there's always exceptions. Back to the NFL. We like football in our
Yeah.
family. So on NFL Sundays, we're spending more time watching games. Watching games as a family coming together. There's also something about that bolsters kids because it's a shared experience. So again,
Yes.
content and then who's in the room, these are other factors that come into play.
Yeah.
When it comes to video games, an interesting thing came up when we hooked kids up to electrodes that monitored their brain activity while they were playing video games.
Okay.
The brain did okay until about 30 minutes. And then once it went over that 30-minute mark, it started to decompensate. And
Mm.
the longer they went over that 30-minute mark, the more damaging the effect on the brain. So that's something to keep in mind. So when I work with families, I say as a general rule, limit video game time to 30 minutes, a 30-minute session.
Okay.
And there's also something called the 30-minute rule. So if you're on a screen for 30 minutes, time to turn it off, go outside, or do something that's
Take a
not on a
break.
screen for 30 minutes. And again, it's about finding that balance, right? Because this is the world we live in,
Yeah, that I
and it
like
doesn't have
that.
to be all or nothing.
Yeah, that feels very doable. Like if you have a kid, right? Let's say there's a parent whose son is playing Fortnite for hours at a time. The idea of saying to him, "You're done. No more Fortnite," right? Like the backlash you're going to get. So that feels doable. Like, okay, cool. So here's what we're going to try. 30 minutes on, and then 30 minutes I want you to go outside and, whatever you like to do, throw the ball around. So let's try it like that and just kind of, like bite-sized baby steps.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
also think it's really important to start small, unless there is real addiction going on. And in some families, there is. And I worked with
Right.
those families.
Right.
Digital addiction is a real thing. The first treatment program I was aware of opened up in 2009 to treat people who were addicted to whether an iPhone or Blackberry. Believe it or not, people were addicted to their
Oh,
Blackberries
wow.
back then. It's a real thing.
Yeah.
Um, so unless there's addiction going on, you don't need to do a full-blown detox. It
Okay.
really is about making incremental steps to start bolstering up. This isn't about deprivation. It's about what are we adding to our family. So it's a real paradigm shift. It's not, we're going to take this away and we're going to limit that. Instead, approach it from a different angle of, you know, we're going to we're going to do some more fun activities together.
Yeah.
What's something your kids wanted to do? Did they want to go to the Griffith Observatory and you can never seem to find the time? Why don't you go and do that? But if you don't want to drive all the way across LA, maybe you instead go to the park and you pack a picnic and you bring a football and you just hang out in the sunshine. The reality is, kids do better and they don't miss screens when they're engaged with their parent.
Yeah.
So a lot of kids are getting online because they're looking for connection, which for me as a parent, it's like, oh, how sad, especially when we're in the house. Now, no parent could be fully attuned all the time, but let's create opportunities for kids to get together with their friends or with kids in the neighborhood or engage with them. And then naturally, they really aren't interested in being on a device.
Mm. This conversation, I mean, it can go so many places, but something that just came to my mind is, parents these days, right? Most families, both parents are working.
Hmm.
Both parents need to work for,
Right.
financial
Keep the
reasons
lights on,
to keep the lights
food on
on,
the
right?
table.
Yeah. And so, it's kind of become this crutch, I guess, for some parents, like when they don't feel like they have the capacity or the time to go to
Hmm.
the beach or go to the park with their
Right.
kid. It's like, okay, just, let me just appease them by letting them have this. So I think
Right.
that's a conversation that I'm really interested in too, is I don't know what the answer is, but coming back to a place of balance where we feel like we have the freedom to put our phones down, put our emails away, put our work down,
Right.
put our responsibilities down so that we can be more present
Yeah.
for our children. That is really, really important to me. I mean, I've been an entrepreneur for many years. One of the reasons why I have chosen to stay the course as an entrepreneur, even though sometimes it's like, oh man, is because of the flexibility. I want
Yeah.
to pick my kids up from school every day. I want to be like today, my daughter's homesick. I want to
Yeah.
be here. And I know
Right.
that that's not an option for everybody. Um, I wish that could be an option. What do you say to the parents that they feel defensive, like, well, I want to be there, but I can't, or I don't have the time, or I'm so exhausted after days of work. Like the thought of
Yeah.
having to go pack a picnic at the park sounds too overwhelming, like
Exhausting.
exhausting. Like, how can we just, create those moments that are really impactful with our kids? Maybe it's not a
Yeah.
full day at the beach, but you know what I'm
Right.
saying?
I absolutely do. And what I would say to you, to myself, to all parents out there who face this challenge of needing to work, and then there's this catch 22 of being able to work remotely, which is great. It offers flexibility, but it also, the way that our world has shifted, it's like we're never off. We are always accessible by email or text, and there's this pressure to respond. And and I get it because, job security is important. And one thing I joke about, I like to say that parenting in and of itself isn't that hard, but parenting while trying to do anything else is really challenging, right?
Yes,
Like if we had
yes,
nothing else on our schedule,
yes.
whether work or taking care of ourselves with exercise or doing the laundry or doing the dishes or responding to those emails, if none of that was on our agenda, we could just be present and connect and, really just jive in those good feelings with our kids. And that's not always possible. I would recommend scheduling some time when we parents, it's important that we practice what we preach. We want our kids to limit the time they spend on these devices. That means we have to do it. So something that really helped me is I had this habit of just carrying my iPhone around with me from room to room.
Yeah.
I usually don't have pockets. If I'm wearing workout leggings, I don't have pockets. So I'm carrying it in my hand.
Yeah.
And because of that, a text comes in or, whatever it is, I'm on it and responding. Something that helped me and that a bunch of other moms that I've worked with also say really helped is set your phone down. Leave it on the kitchen countertop. We've got this wooden like tray. I set my phone down in that tray and I turn the ringer on so that if I get a phone call, or I'll hear it. But that way, when I'm with my kids and hanging out with my family, I don't have those constant distractions because these interactive devices, I mean, I have mine sitting right here. They are experience blockers. They pull us out of the moment, out of the real world, and into a digital one.
Yeah.
And if we adults are struggling with it, think about our kids.
I know.
Their prefrontal cortex isn't fully attached to the rest of their brain yet. They don't have impulse control.
Yeah.
They don't have the ability to resist that temptation. So it's really important that we practice what we preach. It doesn't have to be a big thing. You know, even if you order pizza because you don't have the energy to cook and you set your phone in another room and you tell the kids you're gonna leave your devices in another room and we're just gonna hang out.
Mhm.
Now, I had one mom who I worked with, and after some time that we spent together, she recognized because her son, she was a little worried about him. He was drifting away, he was withdrawing. She thought he was struggling with depression. She didn't really know how to help him. And she and her husband both work, and he's a teenage boy, and he's on his phone. And she came home from work one evening, kind of like you described, exhausted from a full day of work. She sat down at the kitchen island and was going through emails on her phone, and her son was at the other end of the kitchen island on his iPhone doing who knows what. And she thought about the session that we had together, and so she paused. And she said, I didn't have energy to do anything other than like sit and watch TV. But I remember you saying that that was not as harmful to his developing brain as this interactive device. So I turned to him and I said, Hey, you want to watch an episode of Young Sheldon with me? And he just lit up and he set his phone down and said, Yeah. And she put her phone down and they went in the other room, leaving their phones behind. And they sat on the couch and they watched an episode of TV together. And she said he was smiling, his face lit up. They were engaged, they were connected, even though it wasn't, they weren't playing a board game together. They were having a shared experience of
Yeah.
watching one of their favorite TV shows.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be all or nothing. It doesn't have to be something extravagant.
Yeah.
Just pause
God, that's
for
so good.
distinct moments of connection.
Yes. Carrie, that is like such an aha for me. It seems so simple, but leaving your phone in another room while you're with your kids.
Ah,
I had that experience the other day, right after I told my son about how he couldn't do the YouTube shorts, right? So he was watching a sports documentary. He's an
yeah,
avid athlete, right? And so I was sitting next to him watching this documentary, okay? But I had my phone on the couch. And just
yes,
mindlessly, an Instagram notification came through, and I picked it up, and he said to me, Mom, put your phone down. And I said, Oh, you're right. I'm so
yes,
sorry. You are
yes,
right. And so what a simple practice that I can implement today is
right,
when my kids are with me, I can put my phone in the other room. And
right,
we tell her, you know what I told myself? I was like, well, I need to see what time it is. It's like, no, you don't. You're gonna you're gonna watch the show for like 30
or
minutes
put,
probably, right?
right,
You
yeah,
don't. You don't. There's nothing that is going to come through my phone when I'm home with my two kids that is more
right,
important than being present. So that is
right.
such a good point. And you know what? Kids pay more attention to what we do than to what we say. So if
You're
I'm
right.
willing to be there with them, like, you're right, buddy, you're right. I'm practicing this too. I need to get better at this too. Yeah, I'm going to put my phone in the
Yeah,
other room so I can be fully present with you and enjoy this shared experience. I love that. I love that.
yeah, yeah.
I
Just
carry my
small
phone
little
around too.
changes,
It's so silly.
actionable items. Well, I could tell you the science behind why we do that. When devices are portable, there's less differentiation. It feels like a part of ourself. And if you've
Yeah.
ever left your home without your phone, you feel like you're missing your limb.
Yeah.
That's what's going on there.
Yeah.
So yeah, just small little changes can make a big difference. Listen, as I said earlier, parenting in and of itself isn't that hard. Parenting and trying to do anything else is really challenging. Um, but the role of the parent in the midst of these challenges, we need those moments that flood us with that feel good hormone called oxytocin.
Mm,
And when we are doing or they call it continuous partial attention, where, we're on the couch sitting with our kids, but we're responding to emails or scrolling social media ourselves, or we're cooking dinner and we're responding to text messages while they're doing homework in the background, all these things that moms are doing.
Yeah.
We aren't getting that hit of oxytocin that we got in massive amounts when our children were born. When
Mhm.
we gave birth to our kids, our body and their body was flooded with oxytocin. It made us feel warm and loved and like we could do anything in the world. And those moments we're missing out on because we are not connecting with them. The brain can only do one thing fully at a time.
Mhm.
Now, I know we moms are octopuses or octopi, I don't even know what you would say, and we do like 8 different things at a time, but we can only really do one thing at a time. So just do one thing mindfully and then shift gears and say, okay, kids, I really enjoyed that. I'm so glad we got to have that time together.
Yeah.
I have some emails that I need to do now. So I'm going to go in the other room and I'm going to respond to these emails. I'm thinking it might take about 30 minutes. What do you want to do during that time? And I promise you, if you say that screens are not an option, your kids will find something else to do. The brain doesn't like to be bored,
Mhm.
but boredom is one of the most important things for the brain and for your child to develop their full sense of self. See, one of the things that's going on nowadays is our kids have a constant onslaught of external information, whether through social media or video games or YouTube shorts or all this digital media coming into their brain telling them, you should look like this, you should dress like this, you should do this TikTok dance. You
Mhm.
should. And now there's always been external influences. You know, when we were growing up, it was Cindy Crawford or whoever on the Vogue magazine in the
Mhm.
checkout line at the grocery store. But different and distinct from what we experienced growing up.
Yeah.
They have millions of images in
Oh,
their pocket
access
or on their
all the
iPad,
time.
and it's overwhelming them. So they don't get those pauses to have quiet or boredom to connect with their true self. So I know your podcast is called Free to Be All of Me. Our kids are being robbed of the opportunity to even find out who they are because of this digital world we're living in. And it's no parent's fault and it's not the kid's fault. This is the shift, the cultural shift that is happening. But knowing this, we can start to take the reins back and we can start to shift it towards the middle so that our kids have downtime where they can say, what do I want? Not what is the latest influencer telling me or the latest TikTok star doing, but what do I enjoy? What lights me up, right?
Yeah.
And then pursue that.
I mean, yes, this is, all the work that I do and all the women that I coach, they have arrived at this place where they have a sense of dissatisfaction, dis-ease, a disconnection from the truth of who they are. And partially because they've just been on this like autopilot of doing, 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 doing. Because
Yeah.
we have not been told that there is value in being bored, in being still, in being present. But in our world that we spend a lot of time in the meditation and mindfulness and personal development and spirituality, it's
Yeah.
like it's all about coming back into this present moment, right? Being still, meditation. This is what is allowing us to heal and discover who we were born to be. And
Right.
so it's like, doesn't it make sense that those of us who are, I'm 50, a lot of the women that I work with are around my age. Doesn't it make sense that the things that we've struggled with, that we're using the tools of being present, slowing down, coming into stillness, allowing for some boredom, that those are helping us heal?
Yeah.
So that doesn't it make sense that those are the tools and the practices that we want to instill in our children
Absolutely.
now? Now.
Amen.
Amen, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Let's
Let's
let's give them those tools.
let's give them those tools. And I want to speak to anybody who can identify as a divorced single parent. oftentimes when my kids are bored, when it's my day, guilt or, the desire to have them have the best time when they're with mom, um,
Oh,
pushes me to, get busy, make plans because I don't want them to be bored, because I don't want their time with me to be boring. So
right.
I just have to remind myself, and I'm reminding anybody who's listening who might resonate with that, that there is value in that,
There's
and
so
and
much
and it's
value in that.
okay. And even if your kids are bored and they think you're not the fun parent, it's okay, because what you're providing and the value that you're providing by teaching them how to be okay with slowness and stillness and just
Yeah.
connecting in the present moment, there is value. They might
Yes.
not
Yeah.
they might not recognize it until later, but
They might not, but they feel it because it's not just connection with you in
yeah,
those moments,
yeah.
but it gives them the opportunity to connect with themselves. You know, we don't develop, there's a little bit of an irony around how do we develop a sense of self so that we can be confident and stand tall and be free to be all of who we were born to be, right?
Mhm.
A bit of the irony in how we develop a sense of self is it first comes in connection with another person, primarily the parent. We parents and our ability to see our kids, to attune to them, to recognize their feeling states and put words to them, even if they're upset with us or bored, that's how they learn to resonate with themselves. So that when we give our kids those moments of pause and the attunement and put feelings into words, we're giving them the skills they need to avoid a lot of the pain we went through in life because we were so busy doing or performing or, trying to be this, that, or the other, because that's how we end up, feeling a sense of worth. But worth doesn't come just because other um, people value whatever the outcome is of your efforts.
Mhm.
Real worth comes from feeling that sense of, I matter. I recognize it because I experienced that first with my parent. And then I was given the space to really experience it with myself. Like what I want matters. My friends like this, that, or the other, but I like this. And that matters, even if it's not as popular as these other things. Or, you know, the Instagram star says this, but that's cool for them. But that's not what really resonates with me. So
Mhm.
we're not in the job, us parents, of molding our kids into what we want them to be, so much as pausing and recognizing who are they?
Mhm.
What gives them a sense of fulfillment? What lights them up? What makes them feel good? And draw their attention to it. And then recognize when you have all these digital devices in your home, you're not a bad parent and your kids aren't bad kids. Those attention engineers are really good at what they do, and your kids' eyeballs are going to be on those devices, and it's stealing them away from those moments of building who they are. That's
Mhm.
going to give them that sense of confidence and resilience and capability so that they can reach their goals and thrive with a meaningful, fulfilling life. That's what we want to keep our attention on.
Yes. Oh, if I knew that I could, I mean, I don't think that we could save our children from, all pain, because, and that's not our
No,
job.
and we shouldn't,
We
even if we
shouldn't,
could.
right? But if I
I'll say
knew
more
that,
on that.
yeah, no, I'd love to hear more about that. But if I knew that, a lot of what you're talking about could prevent additional pain, unnecessary pain, why would I not want to do that? I love
Right.
what you said. I've never heard that said before, how the parent relationship is the first place that a child experiences a sense of worth
And self, their
and
sense of
self.
self.
That is
Yeah.
so fascinating. I've never heard it said like that before, or thought of that. Like, it's because we're reflecting back to them who they
Yes.
are through our presence, through our unconditional love.
Through our attunement of recognizing,
Yes.
right?
Oh,
Oh, you startled. I think that loud sound frightened you.
yes.
Or, oh, you smiled. I think you liked that. I'm obviously I'm talking more to
Yes.
infants and
Yeah.
toddlers. And then it just continues to grow with our older kids, you know. Oh, it
Yeah.
sounds like you really enjoyed that at school today.
Yeah.
Tell me
Got it.
more about that, right? It's also
Yeah.
important that we get quiet and we ask questions and then we invite them to share their thoughts and feelings. That's how they develop a sense of
There's
self.
nothing better. There's nothing better. I had that experience with my son the other day. He was at his dad's house and he had some schoolwork that was due on Monday. And he called me to tell me that on his own, without the prompt of a parent, that he finished it on his own. And I
He felt
really,
proud.
he was so proud. And so I
Yeah,
spent a lot of time saying to him, I can see how proud you are of yourself. And
yeah,
I love that. Like, isn't it
right?
amazing how you're so responsible and you're so like self-motivating and you took that upon yourself and I can see how good that made you feel and I really admire that quality in you. I said I
Oh, I love that.
admire and respect how responsible you are and I love how good it makes you feel and I just
Yeah,
saw his face was just lighting up and I got off.
yeah,
I was on FaceTime because he was at his dad's, but I got off that call and my heart just felt like I wanted to burst with pride
yeah,
for how
yeah,
good he felt about himself.
right.
And that's what we're talking about. And what you're saying is to take it back to the screen time is, in a way that's like stealing that their opportunity to
Yeah,
really get in touch with themselves and that self-esteem and that self-worth.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, these things are such distractors,
Yes.
right? They are experience distractors, but I love the way that you were speaking into your son a self-concept of you're responsible. You're so capable. I admire you. You know, he's forming his ideas about himself, right? And to recognize he said that he felt proud in himself. There's a distinction that I often say to my kids. I'll say, I'm really proud for you, or or I'm really proud of you. Those two are different. When you're proud for someone, you're proud for their sense of accomplishment. You recognize their sense of pride, right? And
Yeah.
when you say I'm really proud of you, that's more of a top down, like this makes me feel good being your parent.
Yeah.
But in that moment you were resonating with the I'm proud for you because you were sharing in his own sense of feeling that pride in his accomplishments. And that's
Yeah.
what's building his sense of self.
Yeah. And don't you think too, I know we have to wrap things up, but I also think too, at the end of the day, even if kids fight us on these changes that we're going to be implementing,
Mm-hmm.
kids want parents who care. Kids want parents who are paying attention and setting boundaries. Even if the kids say, I don't want boundaries, I want freedom, so and so's parents let them do blah, blah, blah. At the end of the
Yeah,
day, kids feel safe when they
that's
know
right.
that the parents are really looking out for them. And even if it
Yep,
means they get mad at you for a period of time, there's almost a sense of safety knowing that you're willing to do
100%.
that because you love them so much.
You've got it, Mama.
Yeah.
Setting boundaries for our kids is one of the most important things we do as a parent
Yeah.
for the very reason you just named. It allows them to relax, it allows them to be safe, to feel safe. Our job as parents is to keep our kids safe. Now, when parents cave to their kids' demands, when they push back against the boundaries a parent sets, and the parent says, oh, okay, all right, well, then we won't do that the child is filled with anxiety, even if they feel, wow, I beat mom, I won in that, and I got more video game time. But they're filled with anxiety because they're looking to us to be the person in charge of their life. And
Right.
if they're able to protest and manipulate us, they know they need us for survival.
Yeah.
And if they have more power than us and they know they can't survive on their own, it floods them on an unconscious level with anxiety. And you often see more acting out behavior because they don't have the capacity yet to manage those emotions. So, yes, sometimes it's hard to hold the boundary and take the hit. I like to say, in order to be a really good parent, it's a balance between love and firmness. It's
Mhm.
not about one or the other. You've got to marry them both together. So in
Right.
a loving way, we hold the boundary. Yes, I see that you're really upset about this. I get it.
Yeah.
I know all your friends are doing this. I'm sorry. You feel left out. You feel like I'm limiting the things you want to do. And I understand. I know that's hard. And I also know this is in your best interest. And I love you too much to let these negative effects take hold in these really important years of your life. And let me tell you something about when you said you think they want us to be the hero of their story, so to speak, to step in and rescue them from this digital world that's really stealing their life and taking them over. I spent a week at a middle school talking with middle school students about the impact that these interactive screens have on their brain. First, starting with that presentation I mentioned that I'll send to you
Yeah.
happily. Um, and then I had another 2 hours with each of these groups where we just talked. And, I was anticipating that I'd get some pushback and that maybe some kids would be rolling their eyes and like, oh, whatever. Oh no, it was the complete opposite. They were enthralled. They were
Yeah.
engaged. They were curious. They were asking questions. But what I loved most is they were opening up and sharing their experience and their private struggles with these devices. So there were a few students who shared that their parents were unaware that in the middle of the night, they were getting on their phones when their parents thought they were sleeping and they were staying up for hours on end, unable to sleep. Well, of course, the blue light is flooding their brains. They're not getting the melatonin, but these devices are hyper stimulating. A lot of parents think it's downtime, but they are actually hyper arousing and they're
Hmm.
activating the fight or flight system. And so they were sharing those struggles. And I mean, I could do a whole conversation on it. I actually wrote an article in my Substack about some of the feedback I got from
Send
these
me
kids. It
all
was
the
really
links. I'm going to
okay.
include all the
It
links
was
so
such
people
a
can.
joy. But at the end of my week with them, many kids came to me and said, here are the changes I'm doing, and they have been awesome. And I had parents emailing me, texting me, calling me, finding me, and saying, thank you. My daughter decided she wasn't going to have her phone in her room anymore. Now she charges it in the kitchen at night. And I didn't even suggest it. She did it all on her own. And she seems much more well rested and happier. And then I overheard her talking to a group of friends about the impact that these screens have on brains. And then there was one
Wow.
eighth grader who, after my presentation, her and her best friend decided, you know what? Dr. Carrie said her words are not as powerful as our personal experience. So I encourage the kids, don't take my word for it. Try it out. Get on a screen, notice how you feel before, get on a screen, and then notice how you feel after. Or get off a screen and notice how you feel. And so they decided they were going to get off social media for a week.
Okay.
So it was 4 days between the first time I met with them and the last time I met with them. And she said, and so we got off social media this week. I said, really? I said, wow, what was that like for you? And she said, oh my gosh, it was awesome. I feel so much happier and my stress level went down. I
This is
said,
an eighth
really?
grader?
Yeah. I said,
Wow.
really? Wow. I said, so what did you do instead? She goes, well, I read 400 pages in my book, and that was in 4 days. So
Wow.
again, it's not about what you're taking away from kids, but what you're giving back to them because
Mm.
childhood has fundamentally changed in this digital world. But we parents can protect it and we can give it back to them so that our kids are free to be all of who they are, so that they can
I
show up
love
and
it.
reach their personal goals and have a meaningful, fulfilling life that serves them the rest of their life. And these are the years that they're developing their brain that's going to be with them for the rest of their lives. So this isn't just time on a video game, it's actually making a difference on the structure and the function of their brain during the most pivotal period of development.
Oh my goodness. When are you coming to our kids' school? Are you touring
So
this
I
talk?
I actually emailed with her
Okay.
and she was all on board for it. I was going to give the parent talk first,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
I was going to give the talk for the kids. And um, she asked, what do I charge? And I said, you know what is your budget?
Okay.
And she wrote back and said, we don't really have a budget for this, so let me know what your fee is. I let her know what my fee is. But when it
Okay.
comes to schools, I'm really happy to work with schools
Yes.
and not get the fee that I give to, a Fortune
Yeah.
500
Let not
company.
let that be a reason why they don't bring this
Right.
in. Yeah. Well,
And
I think
I haven't heard
every
from her
school.
since. So
Okay.
I reached back out and I haven't heard from her. So when you talk to the
Nicole and
principal at your
I,
school,
yeah, Nicole and I,
you let her know
yeah,
I am happy to come and talk to parents and kids because I'm really
yeah,
passionate about it. Because, like I said at the beginning of our talk,
yeah,
this is such low hanging fruit.
yeah.
And what I saw in my private practice when I helped families remove the, the onslaught of the negative impact of these digital devices, their families functioned so much better. There was often a pain point in the beginning. They got that resistance. And once you get past that, everyone is feeling better.
Mm.
It's a game changer.
I mean, I think it's so powerful, the story that you told of the two girls that did it together. Because if it
Mhm.
becomes, if you feel like you're, because this is another, I mean, this is a whole other conversation. Like, we all want to feel like we belong. So if we feel
Of
like the
course.
outsider, if we feel different, right, that's not okay. But if somehow we can make this be like the thing that is cool, like
Yes.
all the kids are doing it, like we have digital
Yes.
detox time, or we don't do social media for this
Totally.
many days, and then they can come together and share the
Yes.
benefits. Like, that's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
Yes. And can I show you this?
What
If
is
you need
that?
your kids to have a phone, this is a flip phone.
Oh,
There is zero negative impact on mental health or brain development if you give your kid a flip phone. So there
wow.
are alternatives to protect our kids, or there's another device called a GAB phone, GABB. It
Okay.
looks just like a smartphone, so it can take pictures. It's a little easier to text, but there's no internet browser and no social media. So
Okay.
it's not as enticing and damaging because those platforms are actually damaging our kids' mental health and developing brain.
Yeah.
I mean, I could go on, and then don't even get me started on porn,
Mm.
because that's happening behind closed doors in houses all across America. Because instead of a Playboy magazine with 50 images, they've got, 100 million at their fingertips, and a lot of them are really violent. And
Oh,
it is not a good education on what a healthy, intimate relationship looks like. So it really is important that we limit it and that we make it cool again. So I showed you the flip phone. You said make it cool again. A
yeah.
lot of college students are getting flip phones now
I saw a
because
girl at my daughter's dance studio.
yeah,
I think she's in like eighth grade. I had no idea what was going on. I was like, that's weird. Is that like coming? And I said to a dad waiting, I was like, are they bringing back the flip phone? Is this getting cool again?
yes, it is getting
Wow.
cool again
Okay.
because they're
Interesting.
free again. So college students are talking about, oh, I'm free to just be present and play and engage and do
Yes.
schoolwork and connect with my friends rather than being on a device all the
Yeah.
time.
Oh,
So
fascinating.
there is power in numbers. Um, and I think when you can get your community together and really support that really helps. Though it is okay to be different from the crowd. And in fact, we should encourage our kids to have the sense of self and the
Yeah.
confidence to march to their beat of their own drum. Just because everybody else is doing it, it doesn't mean it's in your best interest. So
This
it's
is true.
okay if they're different. And we want to empower them with that, right? Like
Yeah.
that's a real gift and that allows them to excel in whatever they pursue in life.
They know I've shared, so much with them on my journey, and I wrote a book that came out last year it's called
I
Born
love
to Be
that.
All of Me, moving out of self-abandonment into authentic embodiment. So yes, it has
Yeah.
taken me 50 years to stop adapting to fit in, to be liked, and to feel like I belong, and to come into
Yeah.
authentic embodiment. And I'm still practicing it because that voice that wants to be loved and belong is
Of
so
course.
is so strong. But yes, this is what I'm modeling for them. Like, be true to you. Be true to you.
Yes.
Oh my God, I feel like we could have
I
a
love it.
whole other hour or
We
more. I mean,
could.
There's so much, but
Maybe we'll have a part
maybe we'll
two
have
and
to do a
discuss
part
other
two.
things.
Yes, there's so much to discuss, but I'm so appreciative of this. This wasn't nearly as scary as I thought it was going to be for me.
I'm
Yeah.
so glad. I know.
Yes.
I like to tell parents, if you're feeling defensive, put your hand on your heart and
Yeah,
take a deep breath. We're all in this together. I have so much love for parents. I am
yeah,
one.
yeah,
And it's challenging because we've never cared so much or felt so responsible, right? But
absolutely.
here's the thing, every single one of us makes mistakes. I make mistakes as a parent. It's not about whether we make mistakes or not. It's what do we do when we make a mistake?
Right.
How do we course correct? How do we make repair with our children and do better moving forward? And not only does that benefit our children in the moment in our relationship, but also gives them that model that they know it's okay for them to make mistakes. And that doesn't mean they're a bad person, it means they're human and that they
Absolutely.
can keep moving forward, make repair with whoever they had a rupture with, and form healthy relationships and move forward in life.
Oh, so good. It's so good. God, I just want to keep talking because it's so exciting and it's so rewarding when you see the work that you're doing as a parent ripple down through your kids, like,
Right.
and you see them come back to repair
Yeah.
because that's what you've done with them. It's like,
Modeled.
oh,
Right? That's
so good.
parenting gold.
Oh,
We've
it's
got to
so,
hold on to those moments because
it
there are
really
plenty of other
is.
challenging moments. And if we
Yeah.
can put that, in our backpack, it helps us get through the more difficult times.
I'll tell you one quick story and then we'll have to end. But
Yeah.
I had this moment, it was around Christmas time, and I lost my patience and I was not my best self. And
Happens
and
to all
so
of us.
happens to all of us. And so I, took myself out of the room and did my regulating practices to come back
Yes.
into, breathing. And so once I was regulated, I returned and I repaired. This is what I do. And
Yeah.
my son, who's 10, he said, "It's okay, mom. I knew you'd come back and tell me that you just weren't your best self in that
Oh,
moment." Right. I was like, yes, you're right. We
you're
all make
doing a lot
mistakes.
of things so
Oh,
right, Amber.
I am
That is
trying. I'm
beautiful.
practicing.
Not only did you practice it, but he knew it,
Yeah.
right? He didn't
Yeah.
feel abandoned in that moment. He knew mom's a human being.
Yeah.
She flipped her lid. I tell my kids, like, I flipped my lid.
Yeah.
Um, sorry, my anger got the best of me or whatever got the best of me. I
Yeah.
don't like the way I handled that. Here's my commitment to, handle it different moving forward.
Yeah.
He had that in his mind and he knew what to expect. And
Yeah.
now he's going to be able to do that when he has a significant other one day or when he raises
Yeah.
kids. And what
And
a
he does that
gift
to
you gave
me. I
him.
mean, he will return,
I
both
love
my
it.
kids do. They'll have moments where they will not be their best self. And I have learned to give them the space, right? Like, because in that heat of the moment, it's not the time, right? To be
Yeah.
like, "Grr." So I just let them have their moment. And inevitably, they come back and they say, "I'm sorry, mom. I wasn't my best self." And
Oh,
I said,
sweeties.
"It's
I
okay.
get it.
I get it. I
Yeah.
get it." Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this is incredible. I love this conversation so much. I want to share every single link and resource that you mentioned. So we'll make sure that I get that
Okay.
that downloadable PDF that you have available and all the other goodness that you talked about. Because parents, it's really not that overwhelming once you kind of just break it down into a
Yeah.
simple conversation like this. And
Simple
we're all coming
conversations.
from a place of love. And we can just
That's right.
leave our phone in the kitchen while we're walking around our house and
Yes.
practice presence and model that.
Yeah.
That's a good place to start for me. I'm going to do that.
And if they go to successfulparent.com, they can
Yes.
get that free download of
Perfect.
healthy tech boundaries for families, and you'll get a list of simple things you can do. I mean, again, small steps can make a big difference. So,
Yeah.
setting screen-free zones like the dinner table, the
Hmm.
car. Our kids don't need to watch a show or that we're driving in the car. Let's go
Right.
back to boredom. Again, that's really important for
Yeah.
creativity and all that good stuff. No screens in the bedroom, behind closed doors, just small little things that can
Yeah.
make a big difference. And so let's make it really manageable and doable for parents. And
Yeah.
let's take that silly parent guilt and shame out of the equation.
Yeah.
because these devices came into our world really fast and then they took over really fast. And we're
Yeah.
catching up.
Right.
So we can do it.
We can do it. We can do it. We
Yeah,
can be the successful parent. And you are helping us do that. And I love that. Guilt doesn't serve anyone. And we are doing the best we can. And
that's right.
baby steps. I love it. All right.
Yeah,
Thank you,
this
Carrie.
was
I
fun.
really
Thanks for
enjoyed this
talking with
conversation.
me.
We'll have to do a
Thanks.
part two because there's so
Let's
much.
do it.
Yeah, there's so much. All right. Until next
Okay.
time, thank you, friends, for being with us. And I know that you're here because you are on a journey to be all of who you were born to be. And if you happen to be a parent, I know that you also want that for your child. So thank you for opening your hearts and opening your minds and being in this conversation with us. So until next time.